And hello, everyone. It's Newswatch Oklahoma just before the Sooners kick off in the game in about an hour.
The
And
big
so
game.
glad to have you with you. Look, it's the lady that never sleeps this week, Augusta McDonnell from
Yes,
News
they
9.
putting me
And
through it
her,
this week.
the 4 a.m. start, and she's even here tonight. And our first time to get to visit with Erika Lee, who's
Hi, it's
it's
good to
good to
be
see
here.
you.
Yeah.
It's great to see you both. We've got a lot lined up tonight that's fun before the Sooners kickoff. We've got Erika has a great feature, some really great things happening in the food industry. We all know how bad that industry has been hit. Augusta's been doing great work this week. We're going to talk a little education. Listen, if you haven't seen her education series that's worked on Tuesday nights, there's a News 9, Erika, News on 6. You've seen Augusta, Erika, you've seen Augusta's reports. They're great. And we're going
Oh,
to
yeah.
got a little sneak preview from the guy who writes the checks in the Senate, Roger Thompson. And I snuck this one in for you, Augusta, ask him about Oklahoma Ed and where we'd see funding. And then lo and behold, today, pick up the New York Times and guess who's on the inside the New York Times? It's Oklahoma, where the, come sweeping down the plain. So another story about the Wild West. Plus, we've got that Roger Thompson clip, a clip from Hot Seat from Saturday. If y'all didn't catch Keith Gaddy on Hot Seat talking about how in criminal justice reform, the building has a lot to do with how inmates are treated. It's like $1.30 little piece of tape that I wanted to play tonight. But first off, I thought we would introduce Erika to our audience because we've been seeing your work on News 9, Erika. And so we got Augusta from the Great West, and it looks like we have another person from the Western United States come in to the
the Great
heartland.
West, California. Yeah.
Well, introduce yourself to our audience who've just got to see your work recently and hadn't got to talk to you.
Yeah, my name is Erika Lee. I'm a reporter at News 9. I just started in August. I was previously a reporter in Boise, Idaho. When Scott was mentioning the West, I'm originally from California. I was born and raised in the Los Angeles area, and I attended college at USC, but we won't talk about that because no, this is not the right territory for that. And yeah, and I decided that I wanted to pursue local reporting, and it didn't matter where I would go as long as I'm telling the stories of communities and making an impact and just kind of broadening my horizons. And so ended up here, and I really like it and got to meet great people like Augusta. And so yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, my favorite types of stories are stories from marginalized communities. So I love doing stories on Asian community, Indigenous community, Hispanic community, or disabled, anyone who just doesn't get the spotlight normally. And that's just what I try to do. Of course, we have to do the spot news and general assignment as well. So we're kind of all over the place. So yeah, it's really nice to be here. I always see Augusta do Education Watch, and then I see you guys do News Watch. So it's great to be here.
Cool.
Yeah.
So happy to have you. Erika's doing such great work in the newsroom, and she had a story recently that sort of went viral, but it really made a difference. So when we talk about community reporting and local reporting, the story you did about, a man in his bakery had such a big impact on his life. And I think that's such a picture of great local reporting and what you can do when you go find those voices that aren't being represented and give them an opportunity to tell their story. So maybe tell us a little bit about, what I'm referring to. Introduce us to this story and this character.
Yeah, so I did a story on a struggling bakery on Classen in the Asian district here in Oklahoma City. The bakery is called Wok Bao Bakery, and during that time, it was around the summertime, and then I did the story in October. But he was struggling to make ends meet, and his health inspection didn't go through well, but it was because of language barriers. And he was the only person working. He couldn't afford to get other workers. And even when they did, they ended up stealing his money, or they ended up being really violent. And so he was just struggling all around, and he was forced to close his bakery for a little while. And when I first saw him, he just kind of reminded me of someone that, you know, could have been my uncle or it could have been, you know, my dad. And I just really, really connected with him. And even after I profiled his story about, you know, how he works 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., sometimes longer, bakes all of his food. He literally just eats and sleeps this entire bakery. And even after I did that story, I didn't expect him to do so well after either. I just wanted more people to start coming, but I started coming every week as well and became really good friends with him and just went to eat his egg rolls and went to eat his banh mi's, which is a Vietnamese sandwich. And he just has great donuts as well. And that was just one of the times where I felt like this story wasn't over just because I finished it in the newscast that day. Like I just continued to become friends and build a relationship with him.
And so much of great reporting is it's relationship building. And then, so maybe talk a little bit about so you did the story, it ran in one of our newscasts, one of the afternoon newscasts, and then what happened?
Yeah, and also we have another guest today. Her name is Okie, Foodie, and I'm going to introduce her later. But because of her as well, she was also helping him make like a Facebook page. And so what they did was they posted everything that he was baking on that day, what he was feeling, what he was thinking. And so he would make posts like, oh, I make spring rolls today and I hope that everyone's happy. If you're cold, if you're homeless, I'll give you food for free, and just stuff like that. And basically a lot of people from all over the country, the state, the world just started calling him like this really wholesome Asian old man and posting about it everywhere. And he started going viral and everyone was like, I wish I could come to Oklahoma just to eat your food. I wish I could help you. And then everyone just kind of started messaging about how they could help, how they could donate, even if they weren't physically here in Oklahoma. And that's when a lot of I don't want to say fans, but a lot of supporters made t-shirts with his face on it. And later we can show you. But that just kind of started a whole movement. And so there's a really large audience that's kind of waiting for his posts every day because they're just so wholesome, so sweet. And you could just really tell how good a person he is.
Such a great story. Such a great character. Very cool. And so if anybody wants to go check out this bakery, where can they find it?
They are on Classen Street. It's called Walkbao Bakery, Quocbao Bakery, and it is in the Asian district. And yeah, it says donuts on it, and there's a sign that's a little chipped off, but you know, now that the bakery is doing well, they're going to make a new sign, so it'll be great. Cool. I really want to introduce our guest that we have here today.
Yeah,
her name is Jennifer. She's also known as Okie Foodie, and she helps struggling businesses do marketing. And so she's helped dozens and dozens of businesses that were on the verge of closing down in Oklahoma during the pandemic. And she can tell us more about that, but she basically does marketing for them. She takes photos for them, and she's changed the lives of so many people.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Maybe just talk to us a little bit about where you got the inspiration for your work in helping food businesses. I mean, that's so critical. Like you came in, you saved the day like at this moment.
Well, I always point it back to my mom's Korean restaurant when I was a teenager. So about 16, 17 years ago, marketing isn't the same as it is present day. So watching her business fail as a minority has really kind of resonated with me growing up. And especially during the pandemic, seeing a lot of just struggling smaller businesses, and especially the minorities that don't know where their resources are at. That has become my inspiration with continuing with what I've been doing with Okie Foodie, which is essentially free marketing, free consultations, and just pointing business owners in the right direction to know what their resources are and to know that there are people out there that want to help. And there are a lot of free tools out there for them to become successful.
Wow. So you're addressing kind of like specific barriers that you're seeing minority business owners struggling with. What are some of those barriers?
A lot of them is just the ability to maybe read. Maybe they don't know just in plain language what is right there in front of them. I think a lot of the times too, a lot of minority-owned businesses, they don't realize that, you know, they do have the potential. So whether it's something inner where they feel that, you know, they're not worth it, or, you know, maybe they are set to fail, or maybe they should have never even started their business, which is not a great mindset. So there has to be people out there to push them in the right direction, and to say, hey, you had this idea, you had this dream. Now let's move forward with it, because there are people and tools and resources out there that want to help you to strive and to be better.
Yeah, I mean, just for Waffle Bakery, he had the best egg rolls that I've ever had. But since he doesn't know, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, probably no one would ever know if it wasn't for marketing and social media. And
Oh yes,
yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely. He's a very special case. As you can see, there's a Guaco Bakery. So this is a T-shirt that I helped design, and we help fundraise for him during his slow winter months. But yes, Guaco Bakery, just like with you, Erika, he reminds me of family, and just seeing the barriers that he had to go through, which is you know, maybe too embarrassed, but not realizing that, you know, you can reach out to people, that something should have been maybe translated in your native tongue in Vietnamese. So seeing someone like that struggle just really hit home for me, because that ultimately just kind of reminded me of my mom. So without getting too emotional, you know, like I call him almost probably every day or every other day, just to see how he's doing. To let him know that, hey, maybe there are any ideas, anything that you want to tell people. So we have opened up a Facebook page for him, a TikTok. We have, you know, a little marketing team that I've donated to help him and his needs for the community, because it's special places and special gems like his establishment. Whereas in 2020, where no one even knew that he was struggling. And I mean, this story just, I will always remember this. I walked in, and this is when I was photographing businesses, but I was taking a break that day. And just seeing this bakery and seeing that there is nothing in his display case, and asking him, sir, how's your business? And he was telling me how business was just not the greatest. And I've asked, well, where are your donuts at? He said, I haven't made donuts in a few months. And I said, oh, wow. So this is probably a place that I'll have to photograph and put out there on my social media. Because that's what Okie Dokie Foodie did for the last almost year and a half, was just help struggling restaurants, give them free photos and put them out there. And just put them on a map for people to know that they exist. And I just remember talking to him, and he was just down. And I said, you know what, let me get a photo of your banh mi sandwiches. And at that time, he was cash only. It was about to be nighttime. And I remember he just said, no, take the banh mi. And I'm like, oh, I don't have cash. I'm sorry. And he didn't want me to go out in the dark to the ATM, because there's an ATM nearby. And I just remember just thinking, God, I hope that his post goes viral, because like that man is deserving. And I remember waking up the next day, and the post did go viral. I think it had like 2,000 shares. And I remember calling him like frantically, like, oh my gosh, Mr. Bao, like, it has like 2,000 shares. I know you don't know what that means, but it just means you're gonna need help. Yeah, there's gonna be
Start baking.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Start baking. Like, make donuts. Do you have help? Do you have family? Do I need to drive up there? Like, and he was just like, okay, I'll make some extra donuts. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's gonna be much more hectic. And then anyways, like, I ended up calling him later, and he was like, oh my God. He was like, I don't know what you did, but it seems like all of Oklahoma City's here. So that has always resonated with me, and that has been such a big motivator for me, just to know that caring and a little bit of empathy just went a long way. And since then, like, he has been great with the community. Like, he donates food, he donates clothes to the hospital, to other local businesses too. So now we're linking up and helping other smaller businesses, because he just said that he doesn't know what to do with all of this, you know, newfound fame or popularity. He just says, I don't want to be any different than before. I just want to spread the love. I want to spread the business to other businesses around us. So we've been working very closely. And that's why I said Guacamole Bakery has been very close to my heart, because he definitely just reminds me of what I wish I could have done for my mom. So it's very motivating just to see him do so well, from closing down in a few weeks to now he has enough money for rents for the next, few months, and savings, and be able to address his bills, because what Erika said before, he was shut down due to language barriers with the health department, and he didn't know what his resources were. He didn't know what was needed to survive, to pass his inspection. And that's where, I stepped in. I became his liaison between him and his lawyer, and just found out what needed to be done. And that's where I realized, wow, there are a lot of minority-owned businesses out there that do not know where their resources are at, or who they can talk to, because he was desperate. I mean, desperate enough to even hire a lawyer to represent him, because he didn't know how to address his problems and how to reopen. But, Oklahoma City came together. We had like 50 volunteers, and we just scrubbed that thing from top to bottom. People fixed things around the bakery, which they thought, could have been the issue with his reopening, being able to obtain his health inspection, and just, schedule his final health inspection. And next thing you know, he was able to reopen in August. So he was actually shut down for about 2 months. So that was another thing that we ran into later in 2021. So his bakery is very clean now. He knows what the expectations are in his language, and he knows that he can reach out to people like Erika, and to always know that there are people like her that care, and her reporting that has made a big difference. I mean, it's a form of marketing. So, but a step further is people like Erika, they care, and they continue to come back and check to see how he's doing. And I think that's what really makes the difference with the type of reporting that she does, and that has really kind of impressed me. And Erika, I'm just so proud of you, because you can see the good in people, and Guac Bao Bakery, he is a good person, and we see you on there all the time, always supporting him and sharing his things and commenting, and he knows that. So yeah, we really appreciate you, and we appreciate News 9. News 9 has featured me a handful of times now, and I just want to say thank you, because it's not so much of, I'm not trying to get famous, but the big thing is the momentum. I have been striving for momentum to help smaller businesses. I just want to help small businesses, because I know during the pandemic, it's sucky out there. There aren't too many resources for them. They don't know what their tools are. And because of you guys, I've been able to kind of push my agenda forward, which is go support these businesses. They're awesome. They're good people. Here just recently, there is a sushi restaurant here in Oklahoma City that shut down for about 2.5 weeks, Rolling Rock Sushi. And you see that Guac Bao Bakery helped them too. So we were able to raise like $1,300 for him, and I was able to supplement his income that maybe he couldn't pay for a lease or whatever it is, because he was a head chef. And there aren't resources for people like that, for business owners like that. So I just big thank you to you guys for having me today, ever having me on News 9. Anyone that's ever promoted me, supported me, because it's never been about me. It's been about people like Guac Bao, and smaller businesses that have been struggling.
Yeah, I just want to add that Jennifer does all this, and she doesn't ask for any money in return. And it must be so tiring, and you do this all yourself, and
such a work of heart.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it's now about 214 establishments I've helped for free since August of 2020.
That's incredible.
200.
It's such a gift.
Yeah.
Wow.
Professional photography, consulting. Now, I'm linking up with nonprofits. So if there are any smaller businesses out there right now, I mean, we can get you linked up with like free delivery services, grants, even having services like tax consultations, things like that can be paid for through the state. And it's just resources like that people don't know about. And I'm here to be that missing link. I'm here to help people. So just, shoot me an email at jennifer@okiedokifoodie.com. go on my business page on Facebook, Instagram, and I want to help you. And I'm not here to make money off of you. I'm literally there to help you on my spare time. And yes, here's my command center of editing of my actual work. I work remotely, so I make training material for the ACA. So, and then also this, in a couple of weeks, I think I'm also a reservist. So I'm in Air Force Reserve. So then I have drill here. So it's been pretty back to back, but it's been such an experience. Like, I just know that I'm one person, and I've motivated, inspired other people just to go out and give a little bit of their time or money or whatever it is that you can give forward. If we all just paid it forward just a little bit, we could make a huge difference. And I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm just here for the positivity. I'm here to help people, and I'm going to continue to do it until I burn out.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah,
We're so
you,
excited to
thank you.
see what you do. You're such an important part of the community, and the work
Yes.
that you do goes so far. And we're just, so happy to have you on tonight as well.
No, thank you for having me.
All right.
So
Wow.
did you right off the bat, Larry Slife, who watches us a lot. Okay. So Larry says we need a lot more people like this. Great story.
Oh yeah. She found a key area of need and addressed it, and in very practical ways made such a difference, which is just so cool to see.
There's Erika back.
There's our girl. Where you go?
Sorry, I just had to get a charger.
She's back.
Okay, that was really inspiring. And we put a couple of items in the chat. Okay, so first off, you follow Erika at Erika Lee TV. That's ERIKA Lee TV. And then from the Facebook page, Erika, Jennifer had this on her Facebook page, www.okiedokie.foodie.com. Holy cow, what a really wonderful person, and the things that she was doing and making a difference for people.
She doesn't just help, Asian businesses only or minority businesses only. She helps all struggling businesses. Just want to point that out. It just happens so that many struggling ones happen to be minority businesses. So there is no discrimination. It's anyone who needs help.
I just can't imagine. I used to manage a cafe, and
What?
passing health inspection, different phase of my life, passing health inspection when I have the requirements in my native language was hard enough. I can't imagine trying to understand what a health inspector wants when I'm assuming those documents aren't translated into Vietnamese. Or maybe some other languages, but that is no joke. There are very specific requirements about water temperatures at different times of food prep. Anybody who works in the food industry knows that. Yeah, you got to have the really good information. So good for her. She's just filled that need, and he's got his business back, and that's just so cool.
Yeah.
Joanna just said Augusta, the barista.
Yes, I was not a good barista. But I was good at managing a cafe.
You lived so many different lives. You're like, I didn't even know you did that.
It was about a year, and I actually managed it into the first 3 months of the pandemic, and it was quite an interesting experience. Fortunately, the business owner was able to keep it going, but what these small businesses, especially food businesses, have gone through is just and have continued to sustain themselves is really kind of heroic work.
Yeah.
So, by the way, it was the very first comment of the evening. Well, I need to get you to say something, Erika. Joanna said, and I saw a picture of the car today. Car accident. I don't know how anybody walked away. Were you driving that car?
Yeah, I actually got in a car accident a little over a week ago, and it was terrible. I can't believe someone mentioned that. Thank you for asking.
Well, when you look at the car, Erika, that was a good wreck. We're so glad you're okay.
Yeah, Scott. Basically, for people that don't know what happened, I was driving on Maine in Kentucky. I was driving home from work, and I was going straight, and it was a one-way construction zone, and there was another car that was next to me, and they just kind of turned left right in front of me. Into my lane, and they were in a lane that they weren't supposed to even be in because it was a construction zone. And so I went straight into that car, and my entire news car got totaled. I had to go to the hospital, and it was such a thing. I mean, I'm just so blessed that I'm fine and 100% okay. I mean, not 100, of course, but by 100, I just mean like no actual physical injuries, just soreness, a little emotional trauma, but nothing that won't get better through time. So thank you for asking.
Welcome to Oklahoma.
Oh man,
No,
the lane changes are just
the
crazy.
people are just so nice, though. I mean, all the people in the hospital, or like even the EMSA people were just so nice. So I mean, it just try to find the silver lining in all of this.
Well, it's an awesome story, and glad you're feeling well. Let me ask.
I'm so shocked.
Let me ask, shift over to Augusta, because I joked about this on the beginning of the stream, which was she doesn't sleep.
She doesn't. No.
I sleep at strategic times. So like today, I knew I needed 4 hours, and so that's why I warned you. I'm going to be asleep for 4 hours in these. Like I'm going to make myself sleep. So, yeah, I try to get 8 hours though. I tend to get it. I turn into a monster with less than 6. So.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, if you're doing this after
you don't want to live with
3
me
o'clock,
at less than 6 hours.
Yeah. So that's going to go the rest of the week, right?
Yep. So I'm covering the morning show anchors got their holidays off this week. So I'm covering with Colby. He's doing the 4 a.m. and I'm doing the 4, 6, and 9 a.m. with him. And it's been a blast. Tevis is down in San Antonio, Tevis Hillis. And so we've been getting some great stories from all of the prep going into the OU Oregon game. And she was live this morning in the 9 a.m. And it was just like the most fun live shot. There's, the band's playing in the background. The morning show's been a lot of fun. So, and I'm be up there till Friday, but that crew does a great show. They really do. It's a whole different pace, but I'm enjoying it.
Any possible way that you could get Tevis to like emote a little more? She's so reserved.
I know, right? She's so shy.
Yeah, and plus you have to laugh as much as Robin and Lacey together in the position you're in.
I feel a lot of pressure, and it's not really like I'm more like I'm a 10 p.m. girl. Like I'm a kind of hard news personality. Yeah, they know just that's my vibe. So it's been stretching, but Colby is actually hilarious. Like he never stops joking the whole show. So he brings all of this energy. And yeah, it's a blast, but yeah, they just have a blast. And so I've been stretching myself a little bit to just lighten up, just have a good time.
Well, we've enjoyed that this week. I was wondering, based upon last night, which I really enjoyed the show last night, your live stream on education, how many more how many episodes are you planning at this point?
Well, as long as you'll let me do them, Scott. I think about, so the conversation yesterday was great, but so I've been focusing on some of the kind of bare bones, just information about American Rescue Plan spending in schools. The state of Oklahoma got like $1.5 billion. That has to be spent in about 3 years. My numbers might be slightly off on that, but there's a big chunk of money that needs to be spent in about 3 years in terms of just helping students in schools recover. And so there's some really key questions about how to do that well that are being explored. And I think we're going to see some really interesting legislation coming up as groups continue to ask for different ways to be able to, maybe have a 4-day school week, or, there's just lots of, this is kind of it. And the conversation last night was so cool because the Opportunity Project out of Tulsa does some really interesting, innovative work with schools, helping them access community resources to kind of wrap around the school and wrap around the students. And then there's the Rural Schools Coalition with Erika Lee-News, who was on last night. She was just hearing that information and needing those ideas. And it was just this really cool moment of community engagement. I mean, Eric was like taking notes during the show on ideas to take back to her community and to take back to these rural schools as they work to kind of, there's so much recovery that needs to happen in schools. And so I think, last night was such a cool show. And then we had the PEG superintendent, and he has 200 students, K-8 in his charge. He was just great. He's seeing it firsthand how these students are affected. Kids are affected right now. We talked a lot of mental health. That's going to be a big effort for community members to wrap around their students and take care of them moving forward in terms of mental health and their social wellness. And before we even get to, making sure that we get our state assessment scores up. So lots of conversation, and I just felt so much energy and innovation and change. And it's such a moment in schools where the normal has gone away. And I think that's where you see really cool ideas come to light, and people start doing things differently because they've had to, and they can, and they've had to be resilient and rise to the occasion and do different things. And this is a really interesting moment in education. And so I think as long as, I think through the legislature for sure, it would be fabulous. So I think it will be maybe a good place to debrief on. We're expecting last legislative session, there was like 100 education bills. So I think that we're not going to run out of anything to talk about. And, what Erika was saying last night, that this is just such a key, she does a lot of policy advocacy. This is a very key year in terms of bringing schools out of a lot of the pandemic related losses and things that, just in terms of pandemic related recovery in schools, which is far from over. Teacher shortages is going to be a huge issue moving forward in the state. It's been something that's been an issue for a long time, but continues to worsen. There's longstanding issues with keeping kids fed and mental health that were just exacerbated. And so you have, this kind of generation of students who have so much to overcome. I mean, they were asked sort of life and death questions about going to class in a way that, hey, if you expose grandma, she could get really sick and something bad could happen. And I think this generation of students is having to grow up pretty fast and address some really hard realities with this pandemic. And there's just lots to be said and done in terms of student wellness and getting kids a great education moving forward. So Scott, as long as you let me, let's do Tuesday nights. I'm enjoying it. So.
Well, it's going to be, the election is going to revolve around education. And it was sort of like a setup question I asked, because 2 days ago, people may not know this, but we're going to be out of the studio for a while for us folks on the weekend. We're going to be back recording remotely. It was, man, it's been 9 months, I think, since that happened. For 6 months, I recorded Hot Seat and Your Vote Counts from this room. My 21-year-old was doing all the producing. So we did this remotely with John Eccles and Jason Dunnington, whatever hot seat guest. So I was supposed to have Senator Thompson in studio Monday, and that didn't happen. So I had him yesterday. Now, Roger Thompson is the appropriations chief of the Oklahoma State Senate. And, it takes 3 to tango. The House and the Senate have to agree, and the governor has to sign off. Sometimes the legislature doesn't even listen to the governor. So when it comes to budgets, the governor proposes, makes a big speech, and then the legislature ignores it and does their own thing. That's the way it's always been. So I had a few minutes, and that's one of the great things about live streams is we can ask questions, and you both are pros at taking complex stories and doing them in 2 minutes. That's a skill. Okay. Sometimes when we start talking about, Augusta, you run into this before, the school funding formula. And right. You cannot wrap your head around that. There's probably 5 people in the state that understand it. Right.
Right.
So what people can do is, they look at Monday's story and they say, we got $10 billion. We got $10 billion. And there's some adults. Well, actually, we have what's coming up. People, prepare yourself for this. The entire House of Representatives is up for election in less than a year. Half of the state Senate, the governor. So all public policy, over the next few months is going to be through the prism of politics. Okay. Truly. So you've got to kind of cut through, what to get to where the what's happening. So I asked, and there's 2 questions in here. This is about a 4.5 minute clip for both of you. So this is Senator Thompson, who is one of the straightest shooters in the legislature. He will tell you how the cow ate the cabbage. I mean, that's how he works. And there has been a lot of discussion as we started off the program by talking about what the New York Times said today about medical marijuana. It's a mess. Okay. That whole situation is a mess, along with a lot of our healthcare institutions are in crisis. We know what's happening outside of it, but there's also this money, and a lot of politicians are going tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. You're going to hear the drum beat on that. Well, this is Senator Thompson, who's actually, I would call him a pragmatic person who is, he shoots straight. Now, so this is about a 5-minute clip, Augusta, Erika. He starts off with what's going to be done about education. I've laid out a doomsday scenario for him. That's where we pick up the question. And then he addresses medical marijuana. Here's that bite.
Great.
Okay, there are major concerns. We look at the McGirt ruling. Today it's the law of the land. I am developing a great relationship with Chief Hill of the Creek Nation. Chief Hoskins and I have been friends of the Cherokee Nation for a number of years. And
I did a really bad job of setting it up. Let me just back up and say the following. There has been some rulings recently about McGirt that have some people worried about school finance in Oklahoma. Okay. And that it have made implications in terms of how it affects our public schools, McGirt, and some of the finance aspect of it. That's why he starts off with that. My apologies. I'll restart here.
okay, there are major concerns. We look at the McGirt ruling. Today it's the law of the land. I am developing a great relationship with Chief Hill of the Creek Nation. Chief Hoskins and I have been friends of the Cherokee Nation for a number of years, and they are sovereign nations. We want to work through those issues. Both of those individuals have been good to sit down at the table and say, what can we do to work together? And I think the state of Oklahoma needs to spend more time drinking coffee and sitting around the table and saying, how can we work together for the good of Oklahoma, for all Oklahomans? And hopefully we'll get to that particular point. Now, in the meantime, we have some law enforcement issues we're trying to work through. We have taxation issues working through. The Tax Commission did a study this last year that if the McGirt ruling actually gets into tax, we're talking over $200 million of income tax that could go away in the state of Oklahoma. And right now we're challenging many of those in court as we move through. That's going to be detrimental to the state. And whenever I speak to the leaders of the tribes, they want to encourage their citizens to continue to pay taxes, be a part of the state of Oklahoma. We get into education, and education is always a challenge. Right now we're in Omicron. It's coming back. We're going back online. One of the things that we're going to try to do is to do a lot of broadband this next year. And we've got, as I said, $167 million in broadband money. That's in addition to the money that we're going to pull out of the $1.87 billion that we're looking at today. And part of that's going to be, how do we do education in the future? And so I think we're coming out of the pandemic learning some lessons. And it's amazing to me that some of our rural schools have actually led the way on finding a way to be in the classroom and still using virtual learning at the same time. Now, traditionally, we've looked at education and said, let's just give them more money. And certainly we need to pay our teachers. We need to make sure they have the money they need. But keep in mind, over the last year, there was about $600 million of CARES money that came in. It went into public education. The last round, there was right at $1.5 billion. That's with a B, $1.5 billion that went directly to the State Department of Education. So over the last year, we've seen almost $2 billion additional money flow into public education in the state of Oklahoma. And so we need to pause for just a moment and say, where's that money gone? How's it being spent? How are they educating our kids for the future? And which is another part of a conversation that maybe you want to further. Who's the customer in education? Is that the student? Is the customer? Is that business the customer? Who's the customer in education that we're trying to serve?
Let me ask a couple of final questions. One would be, when the session ended, there was still great disagreement about how to move forward on some policy issues regarding medical marijuana.
Yes.
You know, that's an industry that's growing like crazy. We're seeing national articles. I guess people bring cash, bucket loads of money into the tax commission. There's all kinds of things that people don't see on the inside. What do you think is going to happen as we move forward? This is a financial issue as well as a law enforcement issue and that sort of thing. Your thoughts on that particular issue?
I'll tell you what, I was very appreciative of Senators Paxton and Leroy working on this over in the Senate and leading the way. We gave an extra $5 million last year that could be used through the Bureau of Narcotics. Let's get rid of the bad actors. And we've got a lot of bad actors in the state of Oklahoma. And the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, they're doing a great job at doing that on a daily basis. I'm really excited that Adria Berry has taken over the lead at the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. I think she's going to do an outstanding job moving forward. But we do have some issues. We have issues of farmers who want to spray their crops, and you got the float of that spray. If it got over on a neighbor's alfalfa field, they were able to handle that. Now it could float over and ruin millions of dollars worth of product. The people of Oklahoma voted for this. I don't think they really realized how fast it was going to grow and how we're getting our arms around it and doing something with it. But it is a number one issue that we talk about here at the Capitol on a regular basis. How do we honor the vote of the people of Oklahoma who voted, said we wanted it, and we want to honor that vote. But how do we regulate that to keep it safe for people in Oklahoma? And certainly, I think you'll see more legislation coming up this next year.
Oh, boy. Did you notice, Augusta, where he said the rural schools kind of led the way? It's ironic after your episode last night.
Yeah.
One quick comment about last night, and then I'll be quiet. John Cox talked about, we were talking about broadband, and he said, we do everything, if I recall, he said, we do everything on apps because people don't have broadband out here. So if you're building websites that nobody can access, so this top down don't work.
Exactly. And I really appreciated his comments because he just made it so clear that some of the solutions, it's city, when you're in that rural of an area, the solution needs to come from the community. Maybe some broadband improvements will make a difference in those areas, but districts, tiny schools have had to find a way for years, to deal with some of these issues. So I think he's spot on.
One final thing that I had tonight was last week's hot seat, and you've got a colleague, Brittany Toulos, who's been down at the county jail. There's another death this week, in the detention center, and we've been spending some time on that. And kind of right out of the blue, Dr. Gaddy was on hot seat. Now, Keith Gaddy is somebody who watches my weekend work for the last 15, 16 years. He's been on a bunch. He's maybe the leading, at least the highest profile political scientist in Oklahoma, and he's a Georgia boy, and he's written, I think he's now at 25 books. And recently, he was also a fellow at the journalism school at OU, the Gaylord College. And then I looked up one day, and he's working at the architectural school as a faculty member over there. And I had a hard time wrapping my brain around that. And by the way, at OU Books, you can see his latest book, which is about how that buildings influence the democracy and how we approach our democracy. And you all saw what happened on January 6th. The Temple of Democracy was sacked by people trying to overthrow it. And so he's just done this new book, but at the same time, he just written this. My English teacher is going to fire me after the last 2 minutes. But the students at the University of Oklahoma, the architectural school, had done a reimagining of the building that is now the Oklahoma County Detention Center. And, News 9, News on 6 has been covering the Tulsa facility, which is a lot better than Oklahoma City. And then there have been people that have been working earnestly to rehab the building that's there. A new jail is a possibility. It's still pie in the sky. It ain't changing. There, I'm totally 3 strikes now in my English. And so they are rehabbing this, and some people have refused to believe the rehabbing has happened. Brittany went in to see it. I went in to see it recently and showed videos and pictures on this program. But nonetheless, there was just a moment in Hot Seat where I asked a question was, do the way buildings are designed, does that influence the way that inmates are treated? That now jails are just supposed to be holding people. These are not prisons. They're just jails to get the adjudication of justice. This is what Dr. Gaddy had to say. But does architecture influence how people are treated in these facilities?
Absolutely, because the way you shape the space is going to dictate how people are treated. The more light you let into a space, the better materials you use that cut down on tinniness and loud noises, the more calm that population is going to be. We've got good science on that. How you set up the spaces to flow impacts how people behave. Here's a simple one that my students ran down on. You don't want to make a door of one cell face a door in another cell because it creates tension between the people that are housed in those two cells. It creates animosity. So how you shape the space, how people are angled towards each other, how you move them around has a big impact on the experience. How you create a space for visitors to come in and visit with a family member who's being detained in that jail has a big influence on that experience. The idea is if somebody has been, let's remember what jails do. They exist for short-term incarceration if somebody is processed to go through their due process, right? Determination of guilt. Some people are detained because they can't make bail for the long term. Others are processed in, processed out. Then you've got people that are in transition who've already been sentenced. And we have to think about how the experiences of each of these types of people and how to cut down on conflict, but also try and build a little bit better person coming out. Space dictates how you do that.
Isn't that astounding?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we're covering, and people have talked a lot, the Tuesday night, then Augusta's programs and reporters like Erika who show up with this tremendous person tonight. And then one of the things we want to spend our time doing in 2022, which is right around the corner, is we have been concentrating on this facility, but also the root causes of this. Augusta's covering that on Tuesday nights, education. And we are hearing one of the aspects of this interview you'll be seeing next week, and part of it on Hot Seat Saturday, is Senator Thompson saying we have got to do more about mental illness in the state of Oklahoma. People are kind of coming around to this. So if you're talking about mental illness and lack of education and food deserts and food insecurity, one of the ladies you had last night, Augusta, I believe, was saying this, we have the science, which sometimes people in our state don't listen to, but nonetheless, when you lay this out there, the science was if you have a child that's hungry or is traumatized, they're just not going to learn.
Right. They're
Ain't
in
gonna
a
happen.
survival mode. And there's a statistic out there about the rate of children in Oklahoma who score high on their ACEs tests, which is an evaluation about adverse childhood experiences. If you read any mental health work, and an ACEs test basically measures a child's childhood trauma, and you can take it as an adult even. And there's too many kids in Oklahoma that score high. There's too many adults who grew up in Oklahoma who have a high ACEs score, that because they were hungry, they were stressed, there was conflict in their family, there was maybe some domestic abuse. Maybe adults in their family had mental illness that went unaddressed their whole life. And so you have kids that deal with mom or dad being unavailable emotionally or unsafe or unstable. And, the solutions for Oklahoma's health, start with the great education, start with a safe, trauma-informed school system so that Oklahoma's kids can overcome everything that's going on at home and take that key of education into adulthood and choose for themselves how they want to live their life and not live out of the trauma of their upbringing.
Let me throw a comment up on the board. Hey, Joe Dorman.
Okay, yes, this is the stat. You've got it. Number 1 in the nation for multiple ACEs when looking at 4 or more out of 10. Look at you pulling up that fact. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's when we talk about, there's lots of criticism of the death penalty, because so many death penalty inmates or death row inmates have a history of horrible abuse or they were starved as a child. And so I think there's so much to talk about, and there's so many long time issues that we can address in our adults in our society by taking care of them when they were kids.
Here's an article that Taylor put up. So it's in the comments. So if you want to click on this and go to the story in the Tulsa World. Oklahoma leads the nation in childhood trauma.
Tulsa World, always hitting it out of the park.
So that's one of the things that, when we're dealing with people that are happening, with things that are happening at the detention center in Oklahoma County. And there are a lot of things we want to get into, the bail issue, the mental health issue, some of the medical aspects of it. We're going to get into those conversations because in this space, as we've been trying to demonstrate, we've got time, right, Augusta, to really
We've got time.
get into the weeds on this stuff.
Mhm.
Not everybody wants to get into the weeds, but a lot of people do. And this is where we're going to do it. Well, it's getting close to kickoff time. Let me.
So nobody's gonna be watching after 8 p.m.
It's going
Gotta
to.
love Oklahoma.
I know I won't. Going to be repping this. So
Okay,
I want
it'll be
to.
a great game.
First off, Augusta said to me, "We've really got to have Erika on about this story."
Oh, that's so
And
nice. Thank
it's
you.
just
I've
one of the
had so
most
much fun.
uplifting things of the week.
Yeah, just a great story, and we definitely hope to have you back. So
Oh, thank you. It's already over.
I
That was
know.
so quick. I was like having
goes
such
by
a good
fast.
time listening. I mean, I live right next to the jail, so drive past it every day. There was just so much I wanted to take in, and it's already done. But thank you so much for having me. I hope to be back soon.
Absolutely.
This was such a great show. So
With the time we have left, can you once again mention some of the businesses
Yeah.
that Okie Dokie Foodie has been helping that you've been covering? We'd like to put on. And by the way, this earlier today, I had a grainy picture of Erika that I put up on Twitter. It was terrible. I've got a nice clean one up now. So we'll try to put those in.
that
You know-
wasn't me. That was my twin.
Well, no, listen, one of the things that's happened over the next, you guys won't know this for another half century, but sometimes you'll go to the eye doctor after a certain point, and you'll want to get a prescription, and they'll go, dude, you got cataracts or some other old person disease. So I've got to do that. So it's my excuse now, by the way.
So you
So
didn't
when-
think it was blurry. You
when I
thought
put
that
up
picture
blurry
was
Let me
pictures
just have
of
to have
Erika.
me again and upload the other photo, and then I just have to come back if you have me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So
yes. The
so
business
some of
team.
the
That's what we were talking about. I was like, what were you saying?
yeah.
Yes. So Ling's Cakery. She is a woman who bakes all of her own cakes and cupcakes. Second one that I did was Sichuan Story, which is it's a little hard to spell, but it's a region in China. And if you just do SZE, and then it'll just show up if you put on Google, and then Story. And then the one that I mentioned earlier, Kwok Bakery. And honestly, these are just only one of the many that I haven't even found yet, or Okie Dokie Foodie hasn't found yet. So there's just so much people that we can help, so many people we can help.
Oklahoma City's been kind of blessed with such a robust, just kind of like robust diversity. And so we have the Asian district, which is so many amazing food businesses. There's just so much culture that's offered and shared in kind of the framework of our community, the patchwork of our community. And so I think, highlighting those businesses, protecting them so we can all get great, banh mi. So great, Erika.
You know what's really good? I was at the First Americans Museum, and they have really good food there too.
They do.
Yeah, surprisingly, they have this cafe, and it was delicious. I was just like, oh, I'm just so hungry.
They've done such a beautiful job with that place.
That's a great museum. Yeah.
And we'll be waiting at our house. We're waiting for the dip in the between waves of pandemic to go get some pho. So that's what we're waiting on right now. So, well, Erika, thank you. Anything we can ever do to push out the messages about this? I mean, you have
Absolutely.
a vast audience over there following you on this issue, and we can't wait to see more.
Thank you so much, guys. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Erika.
Thanks so much.
And get some sleep.
That's what I'm doing next.
Yes, we have to let Augusta go because she's got 2 hours off, and so we gotta let her have some time. All right. In the meantime, thank you so very much. Thanks to Erika. Thanks to Augusta. Thanks to Jennifer Bowie for coming in. And that was just a really wonderful, so uplifting at this time of year for people who she's inspirational. And
Truly.
you two are as well.
Thank
you very much. For all you Sooner fans, it's time to go see Coach Stoops do it one more time. So
Enjoy the game, everyone.
all right.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening
Scott.
and Happy New Year.
Okay.
Bye-bye
Happy
now.
New Year. Thanks, Scott.